Well, as I always say, it's a fantastic one on That's Classic, and it definitely is. Today we have somebody on that. We've been trying to get together a few times. Hey, we made it happen. It's going to be a good one. Here we are. I want to give you a little background. This gentleman starred as Jon Baker on Chips. He starred in Lassie. He produced the Ray Bradbury Theater. He was a combat Marine in the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. He is a pilot. He flew with the Blue Angels. He is a Texas Ranger on top of it. It's unbelievable the stuff that he has done. But I just want to welcome Larry Wilcox. Hey, Larry, thanks for being here.
You bet. Thank you, John, for having me.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Larry, I'm telling you seriously, I have researched so many people, and I have to say, your background is so varied. It is just mind-blowing. It was just cool, really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
My children always say I've lived 10 lives in one.
Yeah, you have. I mean, I'm like, man, I thought I tried to do a few things, and then I'm like, no, not even touching it here. So anyway, I'll tell you what, let's start. The one I wanted to start with this question that was on my mind, and it's from Chips when Erik Estrada, I have seen where he has said, look, Larry saved my life, and he tells about, that he had his accident, but I haven't been able to find out like well, can you kind of walk us into how it first happened? Like what was going on just before the accident happened, and then
Yeah.
what transpired?
Yeah. Eric had a really bad motorcycle accident on Chips. And what happened is, with stunts, usually sometimes I'll do my own stunts, but
Hmm.
not major stunts. Usually I ask the stuntman, please do it. I'm not burning myself or whatever.
Yeah.
But in Eric's case, this wasn't really a stunt. He was coming in and kind of fast, and then this one gravel pit where we were shooting, and the stunt driver had to leave, so they had to use one of the transportation drivers to have this car parked, pull in and park it. It was no big deal, except he didn't pull in the same place they had rehearsed it. So when Eric came in hot on his motorcycle around the corner, this vehicle was in the wrong place, and Eric slammed on his brakes, both the rear and front brake. And I don't like to use the front brake, or if you do use it, you have to tether it really easily.
Hmm.
And so what happened is he laid the bike down, wrecked, and then if you don't hold both those brakes on when you're down, what happens is the bike does like this. It'll flip you. It's called high siding. It
Wow.
throws you to the high side and literally bucks you off.
Hmm.
And it bucked him off and threw him into the camera car. He hit the camera car, and then of course the motorcycle followed and hit him
Oh my gosh.
and smashed his sternum, broke his sternum and his ribs, and collapsed his lungs, punctured his lungs. And he was really bad. His lungs were filling up with blood. And so they came and knocked on my motorhome. I didn't see it. I wasn't out there. I was in my motorhome waiting for my
Oh my
scene or something.
gosh.
And then I ran out there. They say, hey, you got to come out. Eric had a really bad accident. So I came out, and, because I was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam and all that
Mhm.
stuff, I knew what to do and first aid and how to treat it. So, I treated him for shock and grabbed him. I always touch, you're always supposed to have contact with their skin with your hand or something, right?
Wow.
And then I started screaming at him to not give up, don't give up. This is that moment where your willpower, if you don't hang in there, death will take you.
Yeah.
And it's a fine moment that differentiates people at a very major crisis, because some people just submit and just go, take me. And he didn't. I could see he was dying. His eyes were going back in his
Oh my
head, and
gosh.
so they rushed him to the hospital, and I went to the hospital also, and see him, see if he's going to be okay. And they said they think he ruptured his aorta. He's going to die. And they said maybe they could fly him to Houston at that time in the 70s. There weren't a lot of heart surgeries.
Yeah.
Oh, they were practicing on pigs and stuff, but they thought this guy, this famous doctor in Houston, could maybe try, but they didn't know if he'd make it till then, right? And so the priest came in and gave him last rites and, basically saying goodbye to him. And it
Man.
was scary, sad. And then they flew him from the hospital in the valley to UCLA. And lo and behold, he healed. He didn't have to have open heart surgery or anything. And miracle or whatever. And he always calls, he's Puerto Rican. We used to tease him about voodoo and black magic. And he calls it white magic. So he survived, and he said he had an out of body experience and a premonition of sorts, and he lived and came back on the show.
How long
So
after was he back on the show?
I think a couple months. Uh,
Wow.
we shot with Bruce Jenner then, came in and was his temporary replacement, if you will.
Hmm.
And when Bruce was Bruce before
Right.
Caitlin,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I know. I know. It wasn't
Yeah.
Caitlin. Yeah.
And but he came back, and then he later had his another little teeny motorcycle accident, and he sued MGM and NBC. And so I think I don't know what he got. He represented that he got a percentage of the show and a raise and other things. So like agents and attorneys, they always
Yep.
milk the cow.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Oh yeah.
but
Wow.
God bless him, he's here.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, were you did you and the cast, by the way, on a whole nother angle, did you guys ever prank each other? You know?
No, we prank directors sometimes. Like we took this one director who was different, I shall say, and we rolled him up in the carpet, in a big old carpet. He couldn't get out, and we went to lunch and left him in the carpet. He was screaming and mad as hell. And then another guy, we taped a sign on his back and said, "If you think I'm a jackass, kick me in the ass." And all day, a few people kicked him in the ass, and he'd look at him, and he didn't know what was going on. Then when he found it, he did not think that was very funny. And
Oh.
we had this English director. What was his name? He was a very proper man, and we locked him in the bathroom with a naked girl. So we did some funny stuff.
Oh, I love that you guys goofed around a bit. I mean, come on. You had to. That's just great. Oh my gosh.
The
So did
great one
you?
is Eric. Eric coming down. I see Eric on the freeway. We filmed on the 210 freeway. We were the only ones on there, just the crew, because
Yeah.
it wasn't completed. It was under construction. So it was a great time for us to shoot chips. And I look and I see this motorcycle coming with lights and sirens on it. What the hell? And then I see that big teethy grin of Eric's, right? And oh my God, what's he doing? As he gets closer, he's smiling and waving. He had a naked girl on the back of the
Oh.
motorcycle. And Chips, CHP guys did not like that.
I love that you guys goofed off though. Oh my gosh, you
Yeah,
gotta. That's just too
yeah.
good. So,
Because the hours were so long, it was so
yeah.
hard on you. But sometimes we go home at 3, 4 in the morning, just late shoots.
And you shot on location a lot, right?
Yeah, we would shoot, I think 5 days on location and 1 day at the studios. I hate the studios. It's so boring. Your interior and you just sit around and. Sometimes we'd stay all night and party
At the
at the
set. Yeah.
studio. We wouldn't even leave. We'd be in our motorhomes.
Oh, that's funny. Did you,
Uh,
by the way, I saw that you flew to the location a
yeah,
few times, huh?
yeah. We when we used to film at Indian Dunes sometimes, that was a used to be a motocross facility where they
Hmm.
had races and stuff and competitions and go-karts and motorcycles. And so they had a little runway out there, a real short runway, but a runway, and
Nice.
so we'd fly out there. I had this plane called the Navy on. It had a cockpit that went back and seat two in the front and two in the back. We get upside down and do stunts and crazy stuff.
Oh
Buzz
my
movie.
gosh.
I'd find movie sets. If I see a reflector down there in Malibu, I'd dive bomb it, and ruin their shot with all that prop noise and stuff, right? So, I mean, I would give surfers haircuts, I would be,
Oh
I
my
see, that's
gosh.
how low I was on the water. I was,
Wow.
in those immortal days when you're young and believe
Right.
stuff crazy. I wouldn't do it today because I would be dead,
Right. Right.
but yeah, we flew to a location. It was so much fun. Everyone driving their car all the way out to Indian Dunes, and here I'd fly out my little airplane, pop out of the cockpit. I was so proud of myself.
Oh yeah. That's the way to get out there. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
By the way, why did you decide to do so many of your own stunts? I did read that. I was like, what?
Yeah, well, I it wasn't ego, as in most cases that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Agreed.
it was I as a kind of a wannabe filmmaker, director, I just felt like we could get a lot of really good shots that they wouldn't have to cheat on the back of some stuntman's head.
Yeah.
So, like in the Chips 99 movie, I did this fight sequence on a bus when it was moving, wasn't going real fast, but it's 30 miles an hour is fast when you're standing on top of a bus.
I was going to say you're on a bus. Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, you will you do this fight sequence up there? I said, yeah, I'll do it as long as I'm cabled off, So you hook a
Yeah.
cable to my belt somehow, and they hooked me up, and I said, okay, I want to dangle off here, off the bus, so I'm gonna drop me off here, and if I, push me off the bus and let me see where I land, because I need to know in my head how much off the ground I am while we're traveling, right?
Wow.
And so they pushed me off, and then I realized I have about 6 feet or 10 feet maybe before I hit the ground, so I'm okay, right?
Yeah.
So then we do this fight sequence, and we got all get this thing going. Sometimes I was a little pushy with directors. I'd tell them, "No, bring the camera over here and get this shot up under through the bus window," and
Oh,
on and on.
jeez.
And then we would shoot. It was fun, made it fun. And we got better footage, so there are a lot of different cuts. They
Hmm.
stunts always take forever, so this way they could save time and do the actor and then not have to do a double with the double and all that stuff. So we ended up back to the stunt issue is what makes stunts dangerous. Remember, I told you they moved the car when Eric had his
Yeah.
motorcycle
Yeah.
accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in
Yeah.
this case, we always went and pre-rode the stunt road, meaning we're going to go 1.2 miles and that's all. And from here to here, that's our area. And we scout it, drive it once or twice and make sure everything's okay. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
okay. And because the cameraman's up there with the tripod and camera, the assistant cameraman, myself, and then another actor, or in that
Yeah.
case, I think it was a stunt guy that I'm beating up. And maybe it was the actor, I don't remember. And anyway, we had it down to the 1.8 miles, and then we were all done. And then the director says, "I'd like to get one more. We're going to ride along on the motorcycle and shoot you doing that fight sequence one more time, and just maybe only a few seconds. So let's just go from here down a little bit." Major mistake.
Uh,
We started down, hit a low hanging oak tree, took the cameraman's head almost off,
oh my
tore
gosh.
all the back of his head off. He's bleeding profusely and would have killed me. But I had somehow thrown a right hook or something and I slipped and fell. The only time I fell in all those stunts. And
Oh,
that's the only thing that saved me. And I didn't see any tree or anything. All I knew was I hit the ground. And when I got up, everyone was, "Oh, stop, stop, emergency, get the, ambulance over here."
wow.
And poor guy would never do stunts, that cameraman, ever again. He wouldn't shoot stunts to get some other cameraman to shoot stunts.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
I get
so
it.
stunts are dangerous.
Yeah, no kidding. Were there, in general, in the time that you were on the show, what was it like five? Was it 5 seasons?
Six, oh, I was on it 5 seasons,
Five,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Were there a fair amount of accidents on the show or not?
No, no, not too many. It's amazing because we didn't have CGI then, the special techniques for
Right,
make
right.
stunts look better,
Yeah,
supposedly better. A lot of people think they make them look worse, but
yeah,
um, but anyway, there wasn't any of that. So you had to do the stunt, and I mean the stuntmen were like heroes of heroes or dummies of dummies. I
yeah.
don't know which.
Agreed.
And like we hit this one stunt guy, he was going to be hit as a pedestrian. And I forgot how fast they had to hit him, but they had to hit him.
Oh
And he
man.
flipped him up in the air and came down and it broke the windshield with his head. No
Oh,
helmet, nothing.
oh.
And he was really sore and but like stuntman, yeah, yeah, I'm okay. I'll be okay, right? You
Right.
know they're gonna go home and oh my God, give me some pills or something, right? So no, I don't recall any really major injuries to any stuntmen that I know of.
Right, right. I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Was it, by the way, was it your idea to have Jon Baker mention his Vietnam service?
Yes, my Vietnam service and that I was from Wyoming, it's a
Uh-huh.
cowboy, which I was from Wyoming. I was actually from a town called Rawlins, Wyoming,
Hmm.
but I mentioned because there was this little teeny town I worked for the railroad when I was going to college. I had to drop out because of a death in my family. And so I went back to Wyoming and I worked for the railroad as a telegrapher. And I worked in this little teeny town where you'd hand up messages to the engineer and the rear brakeman in the caboose on both ends of the train. And the messages had to be handwritten with this stencil with like 8 copies of carbon paper. So you had to press really hard. And
Oh,
if you made a mistake, you had to start all over. You can't have one mistake on it legally.
oh,
And so it'd say, hey, a wide train is coming on track 10, switch to track 15 down at the such and such. And if you miss that, they have to stop the train. The rear brakeman has to get off the caboose. And in Wyoming, 10 foot of snow, he has to walk
oh,
back to you where you're at. And he is mad,
oh
right?
yeah,
Mad
he's
at you.
pissed. Yeah.
It's your fault, of course, even if it wasn't. And you'd see the train coming. They'd have what's called hot wires. And this little town was Bitter Creek, Wyoming, and there's probably a population of 30.
Wow.
And I'm out there alone in a little hut with a coal stove, sleeping in a sleeping bag at night. And when the train's coming, I'm getting ready to hand up the message on this little fork piece of wood with a string on it, and then they'd stick out their arm, and then the message string would wrap around their arm, and then pull it in and read it, and those were their instructions. But sometimes you would see the train coming and a big spark coming toward you, and kept coming closer and closer and closer, and that's called a hot wire, and that's that big steel wire that goes over a bunch of logs or
Yeah,
lumber,
yeah, yeah.
and that thing will take your head off, just decapitate you. So they wouldn't get the message when I see that, I'd run, because I wasn't going to let that thing take my head off. And I didn't care if I got in trouble, right?
Right. No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, but I mentioned Bitter Creek, Wyoming, because I thought that was funny. No one would ever hear of Bitter Creek, Wyoming. Right?
Right.
So I
That's
meant
so
that
funny.
I was from Bitter Creek, and then I said I was in the Marines in Vietnam, which I was.
Wow, that's pretty cool. The character of John Baker actually, how much were you really like him?
I think pretty much. I think probably 95% maybe because the Baker character in my humble opinion, this may be some ego and pomposity. I don't think so, but
Yeah.
we all know denial.
Right.
But I think that John Baker was a very difficult role for an actor who thought he was talented, like all actors do, right?
Yep.
Um, because there was nothing there. and they
Mhm.
didn't write any scripts for Jon Baker. They wrote them all for Eric for Poncherello, you know.
Right,
And
right,
it was a
sure.
buddies, supposed to be a buddies series. That was good. Jon Baker was the silent, strong, silent type,
Hmm.
square, and Ponch was the, uh, romantic love, Latin lover that all the girls would like, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so as a writer, I consider myself a kind of a writer. I'm a member of the Writers Guild, and I've written 3 scripts and
Hmm.
sold scripts to CBS and so on and produced them. But as a writer, it's really hard to write. It's easy to write for the bigger than life comedy character because, in a way, he's a funny buffoon, a lovable buffoon, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
And that's how Eric's character was. And to this day, that was close to Eric. He's funny like that. He's an entertainer.
he is.
And he makes everyone laugh, and he likes to do that. I'll tell you a story about him in a minute,
Sure.
a good story. And, but my character was boring. And it really bothered me every day I go to work. And I would write my little Bible on my character, and because there's nothing there, so I had to start thinking about his background and what made him move and why he
Hmm.
was silent or why he wasn't. And or his parents were like, "You write all this backstory as a
Yeah,
good
the
actor.
actor's
You should."
bio. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
And it was really, I finally went to the writers. I said, "Look, you guys, you got to write something for me. I'm not going to be in this show anymore. I
Hmm.
don't, I don't want to just say 10-4 and pull over and laugh and be mesmerized by my buddy Ponch, who's
Hmm.
singing, dancing, romancing, and I'm just in awe of Elvis Presley.
Right, right.
I'm not doing it."
Yeah, yeah,
And so they said, "Oh, okay. Well, what would you write?" I said, "I don't know. What do you think about Vietnam?" I said, "Well, I felt like in my case, I played football and basketball, and wasn't boot camp was very hard in Marine Corps, but
hmm,
harder than any other branch of service by orders of magnitude.
hmm.
But after that, then if you were in the Army and you went to the Green Berets, that's even harder.
Yeah, that's
That's
on a
a
whole
whole
different
different
level.
level.
Yeah,
But anyway, I would tell them, I like to push the envelope. And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll get over it, but after Vietnam, I just enjoy pushing the envelope." And they
yeah.
said, "What envelope?" I says, "The fear, the adrenaline envelope. I enjoy that."
Hmm.
And so maybe you could write something about that. They didn't really, I mean, I don't know if they were good enough writers to even write that. And then
Yeah,
they said, "Well, rodeo. What about rodeo? Because you were a professional rodeo cowboy." And yeah, team rope, calf rope, and okay. So they wrote one episode about me doing that, and then I started submitting my own ideas for stories. The one that we did, the wind powered bicycle, and there was an episode about that, and that was my idea, and I wrote it for the producer, and they didn't give me credit either, which was kind of not very nice of them, but.
they didn't give you
Um,
credit.
no, it was my concept and my story, but then they wrote the screenplay. But I said, "Hey, I should have got screenplay credit for that,
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
concept or story or anyway." They didn't give it to me, and they were always negotiating. They gave me they gave me a little raise one year and a $75,000 bonus for my production company, and so I was always negotiating investment tax credits and all the stuff you do as a producer. I mean, I learned a lot.
Yeah,
I almost became an attorney just being a producer, because
yeah.
all the contracts and stuff. So I did that, and in retrospect, it was. And in reflection, it was a good time, a good learning institute, because here you had a kid from Wyoming who was an, unexposed, who then went to Vietnam and then came back to Wyoming and then was in Hollywood and who thought he knew stuff. He didn't know
Oh,
anything. He was
right.
naive. Dumb is almost more applicable, even though they're
Mhm.
synonyms, right?
Yeah.
But definitely naive. And so man, did I go through so many learning curves. The one of the most important learning curves was learning to listen and learning to communicate without emotion.
Hmm.
And I realized I had so many psychological triggers from Vietnam rage,
Hmm.
and you press button and I go to red line, and I was naively proud of that.
Hmm.
Like, my solution was we're going behind the barn and we're going to finish this,
Right, right.
Really stupid mentality.
Hmm.
But that was my operandus way of doing stuff. And I injured a lot of relationships because of that.
Well, and
But
you also had not that that's good, that's not good, but you were incredibly successful for somebody coming out of nowhere. So
yeah,
that says a
yeah.
lot too. Before I forget, tell me that story you were going to say about Eric.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see, which story was it I was going to tell you? I was going to tell you we were talking about him being an entertainer, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And so on the Long Beach dinner that you and I met,
Yes.
uh, I picked up Eric in my pickup, and I drove Eric to the event. And it was a little out of the way. I had to go over to his area and pick him up. It wasn't a big deal. But he wanted either he drive me, I come over there and drive with him. So we go in the fast lane, right, for multiple people in a car. And okay,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
So that was kind of stupid, but going all the way out of the way. But okay, I did it, and we drove down there together, and it was fun. We talked and laughed, and then I drove him home, and we talked and laughed. So he's always entertaining. So when we go to a Comic Con together or a show, one of the things that you find with Eric, as you probably saw at the dinner, is that he's enjoys being the entertainer.
Definitely.
A- And when here's what I was going to say. When I was younger, I think I misconstrued those actions, as I did many, as
Sure.
being this is first of all, I'm a hick from Wyoming, and he's a New York street kid from Spanish Harlem.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought this is the most egotistical prick I've ever met in my life. Who born this kid to make him act like that and brag and strut around and talk about his feathers and his hair and it's like but as I aged and become more wise, hopefully, I
Right.
realized that, you know what? That's the beauty of him. It's just,
Mhm.
he's just being honest, comedic, New Yorker, in your face, laughing bigger than life. Why don't you see the love and greatness in it instead of the negativity?
Yeah.
So we've become really good friends in our elder age when in fact we weren't so good friends sometimes on the show.
What,
So great
well,
transformation.
yeah, a couple things. Or one, do you kind of feel like you guys are kind of like brothers in a way at this
I,
point?
I do, yeah. Yeah, and protective, I worry about his health and he'll worry about me and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
a we have a good time. We take care of each other and our timing, one of the things that we did always have was we had such good chemistry as opposites. And
Oh, we had
our,
great chemistry.
yeah, and that chemistry was really what was the star of the show. It wasn't
Hmm.
Eric or Larry, it was the chemistry.
Yep.
And that's why the sixth season, in my opinion, didn't work. But anyway, we have that chemistry today, and we're in sync when no one knows and what we're doing and why we're doing it and stuff. So we have a good time.
Oh yeah, I can see it. I can totally see
Yeah.
it between you guys. By the way, Jon Baker, I was kind of blown away. Is this true? He was based on an actual CHP officer, Robert Hayden?
Yes, in a way. The name, first of all, Jon Baker, the name Jon Baker, was the producer's nephew.
Oh,
That's his name, Jon Baker. And so he named it Jon Baker. Like in my script, sometimes I name my son's a character after my son, right?
cool.
Or
Yeah,
sons.
I like it.
And but to answer your question, yes, the character was predicated on Robert Hayden, and Robert Hayden was I don't know if he would have been as good as actor, but he was a more handsome, tall, California-looking
Hmm.
California Highway Patrolman. He could have easily been Jon Baker, and with if you're saying 10-4 and pull over, so
Right. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
anyone can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but he was our technical consultant, and he was the self-defense instructor for the CHP, and he was a motor officer also. So
I
he,
didn't know that. Wow.
yeah, yeah. Motor officers always, they're kind of like Marines. They brag sometimes. They say we're the varsity. The guys in the car are the junior varsity.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Did you Chips actually wasn't a hit if I'm not mistaken when it first started.
yes,
What do you think changed that? What do you think sent it, because it became a huge hit then.
yeah. Well, I think a combination of things. The the original producer, Rick Rosner, was the first year was, I don't know, way over budget, and I shouldn't say way over because that's superlative. He was over budget,
It
and
was
the
over budget.
networks were concerned, and so they replaced him and brought in a new producer named Cy Shermack. And Cy Shermack was a seasoned producer who had done multiple television series. And so he said, "Hey, this show isn't written right." And yes, there was some comedy the first year, and interesting stuff happened to Eric where he gets stuck in glue or whatever on his motorcycle, but
Mhm.
it's kind of sophomoric in terms of humor. And so these are men. These are not boys. This isn't about the Boy Scouts. This is about the CHP. So
Right.
we're going to write it more mature and more police orientated and so on. So they made it a little better. When I look at it now and today, it looks really dorky to me, but in
That's a
its
different
day,
time. Come
yeah,
on.
different time, and it was fun, and people enjoyed it, and it caught on, and I think families where when we go to do personal appearances at these Comic Cons every month
Yeah.
together, they all comment that they still watch it. They even have their children, grandchildren watching it with them at dinner time and reruns and stuff because it's a show that their family can watch without having a lecture on DEI,
Yeah.
diversity and
Right.
inclusion and all
Right.
that stuff,
Right.
equity. Um, they don't want to have that. They want to just watch a television show
Escape.
and
Yeah.
not have a moral lesson.
Right.
Uh, the moral lessons of those days are much different. Be honest and
Yeah.
don't lie to your family, et cetera, et cetera. But it was good. It's a good family show. So I think it became more mature with the new producer.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was because I always wonder that. And then, I know that I've interviewed Robert Pine, super
Mhm.
nice guy, by the way. And
Yeah,
and he had said that when you guys first learned how like to ride a motorcycle or whatever,
yeah,
that he like really could
yeah,
not do it. Like they
yeah. He
he
would
said they literally
crash
put
and
it like
fall
on a
down.
trailer and have him sit on it. Yeah. Is
Yeah,
that true? Like, would you
yeah.
notice that?
Well, he we I rode motorcycles before, but riding a motorcycle has nothing to do, or a little bit to do with riding a police motorcycle. That thing's heavy and big and so on, right?
Yeah.
So the clutch and brake and the relationships of those two are symbiotic. You got to know how to do it and throttle. And so I always say anyone can ride a motorcycle fast. And not many people can ride it really slow by balancing on brake and clutch.
Yeah, true, true.
And
I hear you on that.
and then it's hard to do figure eights and you never look down. You always look back to where you're going, right? And you do figure eights. And so we got cocky good. Eric and I we were good. Now we both went through a motorcycle training with their CHP for a few weeks, like 3 or 4
Wow.
weeks
Wow.
before the show started. So by the time the show started, we were hot dogs, we thought.
Yeah, yeah.
And we all wrecked here and there because that's what happens on a motorcycle. But Robert Pine, they would tell him, Robert, we want you to do. Can you just do the entrance? Just pull the motorcycle in and stop. Oh yeah, okay. I'll try it. It'll probably be fine. And so between the clutch and the gas, and burning out the clutch, right? And finally he would come in and then say his line and then shit, and he turned it off and said did something wrong and like we have to do it again. And you do it again, and then finally he would wreck and he'd just fall over on him,
Oh,
and but it has those bars so it doesn't crush your leg or anything. So they'd pick the motorcycle up. Come on, Robert. This finally there would be two grips behind him pushing him out in neutral. And then the camera would cut before they saw him. Or he would be on the trailer, which we all got on the trailer for close-ups so they could hold focus on two actors, right?
yeah.
And but in his case, he was on the trailer sometimes because he couldn't ride the motorcycle.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. That is just funny when you think
Yeah,
about that show.
yeah.
Why did you finally say that's it? And because you left the show, you made your own decision on that, right?
No, I that's a interesting story too. So yeah, I usually say I left it, but I didn't leave it. What
Oh,
happened is I was in Brazil on doing a personal appearance, and I had this. I should have brought it here for you to see. I have this Academy Award, and people say, "You won an Academy Award?" Yeah, and I joke, "Yeah, what for?" I said, "Read it, chips. You got an Academy Award for chips?" I mean, dude, who are you lying to, right? Well, it's an Academy Award from Brazil, right? So
oh,
it was a funny thing, and they gave me that award. I was, oh, I got to keep this.
oh yeah.
And the acteur in me couldn't let it go, right? And so anyway, I come back, and then my agent says, I don't know. I just got a call from Brandon Tartikoff at NBC, and he really apologized, and they're not bringing you back to the show.
Oh my gosh.
So what do you mean they're not bringing me back? He says, no, Erik Estrada had you fired.
Oh
I said,
no.
what? And so um, later I talked to Cy Shermack before he passed away, and he said, yeah, he said, I was in that meeting, and Erik made these demands, and you were the sacrificial item. And see, they said they have 5 seasons in the can. They need 6 seasons to make money in the syndication.
Hmm.
So if they don't get to 6 seasons, it's over and everyone loses money. MGM, NBC, everyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if they don't fire you, then Eric's leaving the show. So I, they said they had no choice, and they didn't. They figured if they fire Eric, because he was the bigger star between
Right.
us two, then the show would probably not last. So they're going to gamble and keep Eric on the show and get rid of you. And so I hurried up and did a newspaper article interview with LA Times saying I decided to leave the show, blah blah blah, and that. So I protected myself right in business. And
Wow.
uh, and for a long time, I had a grudge over at Eric. I was going to take him behind the barn.
I believe
And
it. I
and
believe it.
but then one day, I don't know, somebody spoke to me, and I said, Larry, you, grudges aren't healthy, and
Or not.
so you two have never talked since then. We in any show they'd say with Eric, no, I'm not doing it. I said, I'm not doing anything with him.
Hmm.
And same, he wouldn't do anything with me. And then I said, why don't you try a different flavor? And you've gone through probably a decade or two of your life with that recipe that you have. That
Hmm.
recipe hasn't worked for you, has it? I
Hmm.
mean, I poked producers in the chest, before at MGM, and I was explosive for a
Sure.
reason that they didn't understand, but
Yeah.
reasons don't make it right. You
No,
don't
no.
get to be a vigilante. And so anyway, I decided to love on Eric and submit to who and what he is instead of transferring my anger onto him for any of my
Hmm.
reasons, right?
Hmm.
And so everything, I think I've never asked him because I didn't want to put him in a position, but I think it helped both of us. And I submit if 10 people, like, we'll be in an airport, 8 people will come over and ask for an autograph. They won't ask for mine. They'll
Hmm.
ask for his.
Yeah.
And I'll sit there, don't say a thing. Now, when I was a young man, that would happen. I'd probably be mad and pissed off and wow, this is
Yeah.
not fair and this is rude and bum. Now I kind of enjoy it because I'm anonymous and I don't have to deal with any of that crap, right?
Right.
My Eagles got all the biscuits I wanted. I got them
Hmm.
all in the film business, and I'm grateful and humbled by it. So usually I'll just sit there and Eric, he'll sometimes say, you understand this is my partner, Jon Baker here, right?
Right.
Sometimes he'll introduce me, I think probably out of graciousness, and then I'll sign my autograph. Oh, I can't believe we got both of you guys here. Wow, wow. And the policemen come out and they became policemen because of us, and they're so happy to meet us and so on. So by loving on Eric and submitting and giving anything he really needs in terms of being Eric the
Hmm.
star, if you will, I'm okay with it, and I don't see anything wrong with it now. I tease him and laugh with him, and we have a life that we should have had when we were on the show.
Yeah,
We have a
I hear
great
you.
life now.
Well, Larry, you took the high road, is what you did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I did
and it takes a
definitely.
big man to take the high road. It ain't easy. So that
No,
that's pretty cool. That's really
yeah,
cool. Um, by the way, in that meeting where, I'm wondering, obviously I wasn't there, I didn't talk to Cy, but I'm also wondering if his people, his
yeah,
agent,
yes.
manager and all that, I also wonder if they weren't sitting in his ear a bit, you got to
I,
do, you know what I mean? That whole bit.
Yeah, I don't know either. I would say you're probably correct. I think that one he had these hard charging two attorneys who were kind of semi-managers with him,
Ah,
and at that time, I think two young men with two egos is as much my fault as was his fault.
sure.
It's easy to blame Eric getting me fired. Well, what if it would have been you? Well, maybe you would have fired Eric.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So don't be blaming Eric. So my feeling is that could have been his agents, could have been his young man's ego. There's no doubt their ego was there, right?
Oh God, yeah.
And especially in those days, in the 70s and 80s, it was
Oh
crazy.
gosh.
But so God bless him. We're good friends now.
I like it. So I
Yeah.
got I got one for you. You don't have to get too explicit or anything. I totally understand, but I'm being realistic. Okay.
Yeah.
The 70s, you're on one, there's three networks. You're on
Yeah.
one of the biggest shows on the planet, basically. You're
Yeah.
two young guys in their 20s. What was that like I mean, you must have had literally so many women trying to get on that set or wherever you were. What was that like?
Well, those you have to be walk a tightrope with that question. I
Well, yeah,
mean,
I'm not like I said, not to
yeah,
be explicit, but how crazy was it? I
it
mean, I've
was
heard
crazy.
some
It was
wild stories.
absolutely crazy. It would be it would be a funny comedy. But
Yeah.
even the extras, Eric would make sure they don't bring that extra back. Bring her and her and her,
Oh,
right?
Jesus.
And so we had pretty extras and pretty actresses, and when we go out to do a personal appearance in some city, it was nuts. And I used to tease, there's another story. We were in Chicago once signing autographs, or maybe it's no, I think it was New York City. Yeah, it was New York City, Madison Square Garden or somewhere. And we were signing autographs at a car show, and the people were outside in the storm around the block in line to get a stupid autograph,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
And we had never had such celebritydom, if whatever it's called, right? And so
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
we're sitting there signing, and we have a cigar. They pay us $10,000 a day to just come, and then they give you all the profits from the signing autographs, right? We didn't even bring photos. They had to have their own. They had to buy them
Oh
somewhere,
my gosh.
and then we had a cigar box, and we charged $1 a photograph to sign, right? $1. Now we
Wow.
charge $40, right?
Right, right.
And so I'm thinking, this is embarrassing. We shouldn't be charging money for an autograph on that's like prostitution. I mean, really? We're going to charge a
Yeah.
dollar? And they say, yeah, everyone does. I mean, where you been? And I said, well, okay, I've been in Wyoming, so maybe they don't do that in
Right.
Wyoming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we signed autographs. We'd leave that with that cigar box stuffed with money, right? And
Wow.
then we go, what do we do with this money? Erik said, we're going to Studio 54 tonight, buddy.
Jeez.
So we would go and party and have fun. But it was fun. It was like living in a candy store. It was all there, depending on what your tastes were.
To continue listening to my interview with Larry Wilcox, just go to the second episode of the interview, which is available right now on That's Classic. Enjoy.